Why is this old woman wandering around the lobby? She doesn't belong here." The words weren't whispered. They weren't even lowered. Marcus Webb said them at full volume, standing behind the front desk of the Alderton Grand Hotel in downtown Charleston, South Carolina, loud enough for 3 other guests checking in beside her to hear every syllable. The woman he was talking about stood 5 feet away. She didn't flinch. Her name was Cecilia Ann Voss. She was 67 years old. She was wearing a gray cardigan over a blue cotton dress, the kind of outfit you'd wear to a church potluck or a grandchild's school play. Her silver hair was pinned up at the back of her neck. Her shoes were sensible flats, the kind she'd worn every day for the past 11 years, since her left knee had started giving her trouble. She carried a small cloth tote bag with a worn leather handle and a canvas rolling suitcase that had seen better decades. She had just walked through the revolving glass doors of one of the most expensive hotels in the state of South Carolina. And Marcus Webb, 29 years old, 3 years on the front desk, had decided within 4 seconds of looking at her that she didn't belong. Let me take you back to the beginning. 6 hours before that moment in the lobby, Cecilia was sitting at her kitchen table in a yellow house on Maplewood Drive in Columbia, South Carolina. The morning was already warm. The ceiling fan turned slowly above the table. Her grandson Eli, 9 years old, was sitting across from her eating cereal and asking questions she couldn't fully answer before he moved on to the next one. "Grandma, why do hotels have those gold things on the door?" "Those are called door knockers, baby. Why do they need those if there's already a doorbell?" She smiled and poured herself a second cup of coffee. She didn't have a good answer for that one. She rarely did with Eli. That was part of what she loved about him. Her daughter Renee stood at the counter scrolling through her phone, already dressed for work. She glanced up. "Mom, you sure you don't want me to drive you? I've been driving myself to Charleston since before you were born." That was 1987. Things were different. "The roads are still the same," Cecilia said. She kissed Eli on the top of his head and went to finish packing. She didn't mention why she was going to Charleston. She rarely mentioned it to anyone outside of work. 4 times a year, Cecilia Ann Voss drove herself to a different Alderton property. Always alone, always in her own car, always dressed the same way, and checked in under her own name, which nobody on the floor staff was supposed to recognize, and wouldn't, because nobody ever memorized the name on a corporate org chart until they had to. She had been doing this for 9 years. The Alderton Group owned 42 hotels across 11 states. Cecilia was the chief operating officer. She had been since she was 58, which is the age most people in her industry assumed was the beginning of the end for a woman in her position, not the beginning of the best decade of her professional life. She oversaw every general manager, every regional director, every staffing decision, every service standard, every review that went to the board. If a property was failing, she knew before the GM did. If a staff member was exceptional, her office sent the commendation, but 4 times a year, she left the title behind. No company car, no badge, no assistant calling ahead, just a reservation made through the standard booking portal, a regular room, and a notebook in her tote bag with a small brass clasp she'd bought at a flea market in Savannah 12 years ago. She called it a walkthrough. Her assistant, Theodora, called it something else. She called it the only honest thing left in hospitality. Cecilia pulled up to the Alderton Grand Charleston at 2:15 in the afternoon. The building was everything a 5-star property was supposed to be from the outside. Pale stone facade, polished brass fixtures on the doors, window boxes full of white flowers that somebody tended carefully every morning. A valet attendant stood near the entrance in a burgundy vest. She didn't use the valet. She parked in the garage herself. She walked through the parking structure, through the side entrance, and across the marble lobby floor with her canvas suitcase rolling behind her. The lobby smelled like fresh gardenias. The lighting was warm gold. A string quartet played softly near the seating area by the windows. At this hour on a Thursday, the space was populated with business travelers, a few couples, a family with 2 children who were being held very firmly by the hand. Cecilia moved toward the front desk. There were 3 agents on duty. Two were helping other guests. The third, the one with the name tag that read Marcus, was standing with his arms folded, scanning the lobby with a particular expression of someone who was deciding, on sight, which guests warranted his attention. His eyes moved over her, then past her, then came back. That was when he said it. "Why is this old woman wandering around the lobby? She doesn't belong here." He said it to the aged beside him, a young woman named Priya, who went immediately still. Priya's hands, which had been typing something on her keyboard, stopped moving. Her eyes dropped to the counter. She did not respond. Cecilia walked to the desk. She set her tote bag down and looked at Marcus. "I have a reservation," she said. "Voss. Cecilia Voss." Marcus looked at her the way someone looks at a car that shouldn't be in the parking space they wanted. Slow, appraising, unhurried. He pulled up the screen. His expression didn't change. "This reservation is for a deluxe king." "That's correct. Those rooms start at $420 a night. I'm aware of the rate. I booked it." He tilted his head slightly. Something shifted in his posture. Not aggression exactly. Something more practiced than that. The low-grade condescension of a person who has decided, before a single word is exchanged, that they are dealing with a mistake. "May I ask the purpose of your visit?" Cecilia looked at him for a moment. "That's not a standard check-in question. I ask all our guests." He hadn't. She had watched him check in 2 people before her. He hadn't asked either of them anything beyond their name and a request for a credit card. "I'm here on personal business," she said. He nodded slowly, the way someone nods when they don't believe you. "Do you have a rewards membership with us?" "I do." He typed. He looked at the screen. He typed again. He took considerably longer than the process required. Then he looked up. "The card on file is expired." She opened her wallet and handed him a different card. He took it, examined it, turned it over, ran it through the reader, looked at the screen for several long seconds. "This isn't a credit card. It's a debit card. It's a debit card with sufficient funds." "Is that a problem?" "Our policy for this room tier requires a credit card for the incidental hold. Your policy," Cecilia said carefully, "allows for a debit card with a pre-authorization hold. That's been company policy for 4 years." He blinked. He hadn't expected that. "I'll need to confirm that with my manager." "Please do," she said. He didn't move toward the phone. He stayed exactly where he was and looked at her again. That long, slow look that had nothing to do with policy and everything to do with the gray cardigan and the canvas suitcase and the sensible shoes. "Ma'am, can I ask, are you certain you have the right hotel? There are several very nice properties nearby at different price points. The Comfort Inn on Morrison Street is quite well regarded." The words landed in the lobby like something dropped from a height. Priya made a sound. A small, involuntary intake of breath. The agent at the far end of the desk went very still. Cecilia rested both hands flat on the counter. "I have a confirmed reservation at this hotel," she said. "My card is valid. I would like to check in." Marcus exhaled through his nose. He turned back to the screen. "I'll need to run an additional identity verification. Hotel policy for first-time guests paying with debit. There was no such policy." Priya, standing 3 feet away, knew there was no such policy. She pressed her thumbnail against the edge of her keyboard and said nothing. "Your driver's license, please." Cecilia opened her wallet and placed her license on the counter. Marcus picked it up. He looked at it the way a customs agent looks at a passport from a country they're not sure they recognize. He read it slowly. He set it down. "Cecilia Voss," he said. He said the name the same way Sullivan had said Olivia Grant 14 months later, in an airport in Atlanta. Like it tasted like something he didn't order. "Is there a problem with my license?" "No," he said. He handed it back without looking at her. He took another minute. A full minute of typing and screen reading and deliberate, performative processing that was not processing anything at all. Then he printed 2 key cards, slid them across the counter in their paper sleeve, and turned to the keyboard without another word. No welcome, no orientation to the property, no mention of the complimentary evening wine service that the Alderton Grand offered every guest at check-in. No eye contact. Your room is on the 4th floor. Cecilia took the key cards. She picked up her tote bag. She looked at Priya, who still had not moved, whose eyes were still fixed on the counter below her. Then she looked back at Marcus. "Thank you," she said. She rolled her suitcase to the elevator and pressed the button for the 4th floor. In the elevator, she reached into her tote bag and took out the notebook with the brass clasp. She opened it to the first clean page. She uncapped her pen. She wrote the date, the time, the property address, and one name. Marcus Webb. Then she began. The room on the 4th floor was exactly what it should have been. The bed was made with military precision. The towels were folded into sharp rectangles on the bathroom rack. The windows looked out over the harbor, and at 3 in the afternoon, the water was the particular flat blue that only existed on the Carolina coast in late summer. A fruit plate sat on the dresser. A card with the welcome message was propped on the nightstand. Cecilia set her suitcase at the foot of the bed. She sat in the chair by the window. She called Renee. "Made it fine. How's the room?" "It's beautiful. Tell Eli I found the answer to his question. There's a door knocker on the main entrance. 2 of them." Renee laughed. "Did you find out why?" She hadn't, but she would ask someone before she left. She ordered room service at 6 o'clock. A bowl of she-crab soup and a side of cornbread, and ate it at the small table by the window while she continued writing in her notebook. She documented the check-in process in full. Every word Marcus had said, every word he hadn't said. The policy he had invented. The Comfort Inn suggestion. The extra minute of performative delay, the 2 guests who had been checked in before her, both white men in business suits, who had been through the process in under 4 minutes each, with smiles and welcome packets, and verbal descriptions of the evening wine service. She wrote 6 pages. Her handwriting was careful and even. Then, she turned on the television, finished her cornbread, and watched the evening news until she fell asleep in the chair with the notebook still open in her lap. The next morning, Cecilia walked through the hotel for 2 hours. She had the eye for it that only came from doing this for 9 years. She knew what a well-run property felt like from the inside. The breakfast service was excellent. A young man named Darnell managed the entire buffet station alone during the 7 o'clock rush, and did it with the kind of quiet competence that deserved to be recognized. The housekeeping supervisor, a woman named Iris who had been with the Charleston property for 11 years, was moving through the 3rd floor corridor with a clipboard and the measuring tape, checking that the towel art in each room met brand standard before the guests woke up. Cecilia watched both of them without introducing herself. She noted their names. She wrote 2 paragraphs about each of them in her notebook. Then she went back to the lobby. Marcus was at the desk. Same posture, same arms folded. He was talking to a colleague when she walked in, and he glanced at her the way you glance at furniture. A brief, disinterested flicker, and then away. She sat in the seating area near the windows for 45 minutes. She watched him. She watched how he spoke to guests. She watched the particular warmth that appeared in his face when certain guests approached the desk, and the particular absence of it when others did. She watched him redirect an elderly black couple, firmly, not rudely, but firmly, toward a different information desk, when they asked about upgrading their room. A question Priya, standing right beside him, could have answered in 30 seconds. She wrote everything down. At 11 o'clock, a man crossed the lobby with the particular walk of someone who believed every room improved by his presence. Broad shoulders. Pressed shirt. The Alderton Grand's general manager badge clipped to his lapel. His name was Gordon Fitch. He had been GM of this property for 3 years, inherited a solid operation, and had managed it with the aggressive confidence of a man who attributed all the credit to himself. He saw Cecilia in the seating area, and his eyes moved past her. Then he walked to the front desk and said something to Marcus that made Marcus laugh. Cecilia closed her notebook. She walked to the front desk. "Excuse me," she said. "Mr. Fitch." Gordon Fitch turned. His expression was the practiced warmth of a manager who knew how to perform attentiveness for a guest complaint without meaning any of it. "Good morning, ma'am. Can I help you?" "I'd like a word." "Privately, please." He gestured toward the business center alcove near the elevator. "Of course. Right this way." They stepped away from the desk. Cecilia opened her notebook. She looked up at him. "My name is Cecilia Ann Voss. I'm the Chief Operating Officer of the Alderton Group. I checked in yesterday afternoon as part of our quarterly property review program." The blood left Gordon Fitch's face with impressive speed. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "Your front desk agent," she continued, pointing toward Marcus without turning her head, "directed me toward a different hotel because he didn't believe I could afford this one. He invented a debit card policy that doesn't exist. He required an identity verification that isn't in any procedure manual we've published since 2019. He performed a 4-minute check-in in under 90 seconds for the 2 guests before me and spent 7 minutes on mine. And this morning I watched him redirect an older black couple away from an upgrade inquiry that Priya," she nodded at the young woman at the far end of the desk who had gone the color of chalk, "could have answered immediately and correctly." Gordon Fitch was staring at her the way a person stares at something they can't yet make their brain process. "Ms. Voss, I had no idea you were here." "That's the point," she said. She turned a page in her notebook. She had more. "I also have commendations. Darnell in the breakfast service, Iris on the housekeeping team. Both of them are running their areas at a standard I'd want replicated across every Alderton property in the Southeast. I'll be sending formal commendations through the HR system by end of day." She closed the notebook. She looked at him. "But we need to talk about what I observed at this desk. And we need to talk about whether this is a pattern or an incident." The color that had left Gordon Fitch's face did not come back. What happened next unfolded with the particular speed of institutional accountability when the evidence is already written down in 12 pages of careful handwriting, and witnessed by a second front desk agent who, it turned out, had been waiting 16 months for someone to ask her what she had seen. Priya Anand was 24 years old. She had joined the Alderton Grand straight out of hospitality school. She was good at her job, and she knew it. She had also spent 16 months watching Marcus Webb make certain guests feel exactly the way Cecilia had been made to feel, and she had said nothing because Marcus was senior to her, and because Gordon Fitch had the particular habit of becoming unavailable when uncomfortable subjects were raised. When Cecilia's office called the property the following morning, Priya picked up on the second ring. She had been expecting the call. She had already written 4 pages of her own. She gave her account in a steady voice. She had dates. She had dates. She had names. She had incidents. She had personally witnessed and said nothing about, and had been carrying like a stone in her chest ever since. The compliance team arrived in Charleston on Friday morning. It took them 2 days. By Sunday evening, they had spoken to 11 staff members. 7 of them had something to say. 3 of them had been waiting years to say it. Marcus Webb had been with the Alderton Grand for 3 years. In that time, he had received 2 informal complaints from guests who had described feeling singled out or unwelcome during the check-in process. Both complaints had been reviewed by Gordon Fitch. Both had been closed with a note reading, "No conclusive evidence of misconduct." Guest satisfaction scores remain within acceptable range. The compliance team pulled the security footage from the front desk going back 18 months. They found 8 incidents. 8 separate check-ins where the pattern was clear in the footage even without sound. The extended processing time. The invented requests for additional documentation. The body language. The guests in question in 7 out of 8 incidents were Black or Latino. 8 incidents. 2 complaints. 0 discipline. Gordon Fitch had known, not everything, but enough to ask a real question, and he had chosen not to. The regional director received the preliminary findings on Monday morning. She forwarded them to Cecilia's office by noon. Cecilia read the report at her desk in Columbia. She read it twice. Then she called Patricia Osei, the Alderton Group's chief people officer, and spoke for 40 minutes. The decision took until Wednesday. It was not a difficult one. Marcus Webb was terminated for a sustained pattern of discriminatory conduct in guest services. His termination was effective immediately. Gordon Fitch received a formal performance improvement plan and was placed under regional oversight for the next 12 months, pending a full review of complaint handling procedures at the Charleston property. If the review found evidence of willful suppression, his contract would not be renewed. Cecilia issued a statement to the Charleston staff through the property's internal communication system. She didn't gloat. She didn't use words like justice or accountability in their loudest forms. She said what she always said when she had to say something hard. This isn't about one person making one mistake. It's about what we allow to become normal. The moment any guest is made to feel like they don't belong in one of our lobbies, not for their age, not for their appearance, not for the bag they carry or the shoes they wear, we have failed at the only thing that actually matters in this business, how we make people feel when they walk through that door. She asked every property manager in the company to read it to their teams. Most of them did. Now let me tell you where things went from there. Priya Anand was offered a promotion to front desk supervisor at the Alderton Grand within 6 months. She asked, instead, to be transferred to the company's regional training program. She wanted to teach new hires. She was given the position, her first training module, the one she wrote herself and insisted be included in every new hire orientation across all 42 Alderton properties, was called First Impressions Are Not About the Guest. It was about what it meant to extend dignity without conditions. She told her training cohorts the same thing every time she started a new group. You don't wait until someone proves they belong before you welcome them. The welcome is the proof. That's the whole job. Darnell received a formal commendation from Cecilia's office and a quarterly performance bonus. He framed the letter. He put it above the break room coffee maker at the Charleston property where it stayed for years. Iris, the housekeeping supervisor, was nominated for the Alderton Group's Annual Excellence Award. She won it. She flew to the award ceremony in Dallas and sat in the front row and cried when they called her name, which surprised her because she was not generally a person who cried in public. She told a reporter afterward that the part she remembered most wasn't the award. It was the phone call she had gotten the week before from a woman at the corporate office who had called just to say, "I watched you work, and you do it exactly right." Gordon Fitch finished his 12-month improvement plan. The review found no evidence of willful suppression. He had been negligent, not malicious, which is its own kind of problem, but a different one. He remained at the Charleston property. He was quieter. He asked more questions. He started reading guest complaint forms himself, instead of delegating them. Some people, when given the chance, choose to change. Gordon Fitch appears to have been one of them. Marcus Webb did not contest his termination through the arbitration process, which he was entitled to do. His attorney reportedly advised against it, given the footage. Last anyone heard, he was working at a rental car company near the airport. No front desk. No lobby. No guests walking in from a long drive who needed someone to look at them and see a person worth welcoming. And Cecilia Voss? She still drives herself to Charleston twice a year. The Alderton Grand is on her regular circuit. She parks in the garage. She rolls her canvas suitcase through the side entrance. She wears the gray cardigan when the weather calls for it. The broken brass clasp on her tote bag finally gave out last spring. Renee offered to buy her a new one. Eli, who is now 11 and has opinions about everything, said Grandma should get one with a zipper because clasps are old-fashioned. Cecilia thanked them both and bought the exact same kind from the same flea market in Savannah. She kept the broken one, too. It sits on the corner of her desk at the corporate office in Columbia. She doesn't explain it to people who notice it. Most of them don't ask. The ones who do tend to already understand. The quarterly walkthrough program that Cecilia had been running quietly for 9 years was, after the Charleston incident, formally adopted as a company-wide policy. Every regional director in the Alderton Group now conducts at least 2 anonymous property visits per year. They travel in their personal vehicles. They pay with their own cards. They carry their own bags. Nobody calls ahead. The hospitality trade press wrote about it. They called it the Voss model. Cecilia told the interviewer she didn't love the name. She said it shouldn't require a COO to personally experience what it feels like to be turned away from her own company's lobby before anyone takes the problem seriously. But the name stuck. Within 18 months, 2 other hotel groups adopted versions of the same program. One of them cited the Charleston incident specifically in their internal memos. The language they used was careful. They talked about service equity and brand consistency, but everyone who read it understood what they were really talking about. You are what you do when no one is checking. And eventually, someone always checks. I want to ask you something directly. If you had been standing in that lobby, if you had watched a woman set her back on the counter and heard someone say she didn't belong there, what would you have done? Would you have kept walking? Would you have said something? Would you have been like Priya, who knew it was wrong for 16 months and carried the weight of her silence like a debt she was waiting to repay? There's no clean answer. I know that. But I think most of us have a Priya moment somewhere in our lives. A moment when we saw something we knew was wrong, and we looked at the floor and we moved on. And we told ourselves it wasn't our place, that it wasn't the right time, that someone else would handle it. The thing about those moments is that they don't disappear. They sit down inside you and they stay there. Priya knew that. That's why she picked up the phone on the second ring. What Cecilia said in her statement to the staff is the thing I keep coming back to. Not as a business principle, as a human one. The moment any person is made to feel like they don't belong, not for their age, not for their appearance, not for the bag they carry or the shoes they wear. Something has failed. Not a policy. Something older than that. How you greet a stranger. That's the truth of who you are. Not the title, not the uniform, not the performance of warmth you put on when someone important is watching. The truth is what happens in the lobby on a Thursday afternoon when you see an old woman with a canvas suitcase and a cardigan, and you have exactly 4 seconds to decide what she's worth to you. Drop a comment and tell me. What would you have done? And if this one stayed with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because respect isn't a policy. It's a practice. And it starts before anyone has proven they deserve it.